a lot of artists, like anywhere from, let's say, like 50 to 70% of your revenue is taken by your label, So in this period where it's literally we're just splitting it two ways and we keep it moving, it's been a blessing in this period. I also think that, like, the fact that we're able to just, like, because we've always been like very militant in that, no, we're not paying radio, no, we're not paying TV. So actually, like, if you don't play it, that's your own, and it's hindered us for a long time. But now it's now a more democratized setup where it's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's social media. You can create a song here now in London. Ghost can create his verse in Lagos. We put it out and it's gone around the world tomorrow. And so for me, it's like now the playing field is somewhat even.
Welcome to Third Culture Africans, the lifestyle podcast for dreamers, thinkers, and doers. We celebrate artistry, share stories from those brave enough to create something and succeed, listen to diverse perspectives on African success, and those shifting the needle on culture. I'm Zeza Oriaki Sao, your host. On this week's episode of Third Culture Africans, my guest is Wale Davies, a modest, open artist who is a true student of his craft, believes in technology solutions for fostering and growing the creative community in Africa. He's a pioneer of independent music in Africa. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did sitting with Wale. Hi, Wale. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Third Culture Africans.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and inviting me on.
Yeah, you're officially our first artist, musician, entrepreneur.
Okay.
When I started the idea of the show, I really wanted to be able to show, I guess, a variety of people in various careers. And music was one of the things. I think culturally as Africans, music plays a huge role in our psyche as people, plays a huge role in our community and especially in our society. And with you, musician, Show Dem Camp, aka Tech. Do you still go by Tech, by the way?
Yeah, it's really weird, like, because I think my personal life has merged into like my creating of music or art or whatever you want to call it. Like, I feel a lot of people just call me Wale now. Like, a lot of people, some people still call me Tech. It's whichever they choose. I'm happy.
Fab. Okay. Entrepreneur, so record label owner, production company, video and film director, talent manager, and all around sort of creative and the evolution thereof. Looking into your digital footprint, you started off in corporate, right? Good African kid, got your degrees, and then went into finance and started building a decent career, right? In finance.
Yeah. So I where did I start? Like, so basically when I was in the UK, like when I was at university, I'd look for jobs, and the ones I found that paid the best, to be honest, not like I had a great love for finance, but the ones I found that paid the best were, because I went to university in Brighton in the UK, and there were jobs at Lloyd's and American Express, and they were mostly credit-based jobs. That's what was offered to students. But then in getting in to the company, they quickly, I guess, somehow shifted me along different departments in American Express whilst I was still a student, whilst I was still trying to graduate. And then I feel as a result of that, when I started looking for employment after I graduated, I took a year out, and then I started looking for a job. And everyone I knew, most of my friends were all like very highly ambitious, like finance-based people. So I guess most of the stuff that was coming my way were finance-based jobs. So I applied to work at Cisco Systems. They had a financial management graduate training program that I applied, and somehow, I say somehow because like I was probably the least qualified person at their interviews, but yeah, somehow managed to get. So I moved out to Amsterdam for 2 years and worked with them.
Nice. And then you said you took a year out. Was the year out to sort of figure out if you were doing the music thing with Show Dem Camp or?
No, not at all. So with music, it was never a plan to be a musician as a career. Like, It was like I think just with background and family and things like that, it just never really seemed like a viable or worthwhile plan. And I just felt like the obstacles to pursue that as a career were like too much, So at the time I was rapping at university, and we were meeting producers in London, and we had like put out a song that then we weren't even called Show Dem Camp, we were called Loose Cannons randomly. But we put out a song that won some BBC One Extra competition. So our song got played on radio, we thought, oh, wow, we've made it. And then nothing came from that. And then I think it just kind of showed me that, look, man, like this is not, it's a good, nice thing to do at university. It's a thing you enjoy doing and you really love doing. You can always just do it on the side anyway, but you have to now face the real world and get a job and do what, normal people do. And so that was what I did. I took a year out because I think I've never really, and it's a shame in a way, because I've never really approached academics with any real, like, it's never really been difficult, but at the same time, I've never ever applied myself seriously towards academics. I always did exactly what I needed to do to pass. Like literally, if the cutoff was like 70%, I would get like 71 or 72, because I just never really enjoyed it, to be honest. And so after doing it, like before I went to Brighton, I'd gone to another university for 2 years where I did absolutely nothing. So I was just like fatigued from studying and being in a structured environment. So I was like, look, I just need a year to laze about and basically do nothing, really enjoy life, as you'd say. Yeah,
gap year, basically, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Figure it out, know what you're doing,
travel a little bit.
What I found interesting actually is you are my second African University of Brighton alumni who has done great things in like the creative industry. And I'm starting to wonder if there's something about being in University of Brighton that seems to create a cultural shift in people's minds.
I think more than anything, it opens you up to different sides of, I guess, what could be viewed as liberal thought. Because, coming from Nigeria, for example, and it's a touchy thing to talk about, but coming from Nigeria, for example, like the concept of like, I don't know, homosexuality was completely alien and foreign and demonized and all those things. And then I went to Brighton, and then, so I got there as this like super, I wouldn't say homophobic Black African guy, but I was just like, yeah, you guys stay over there, don't come near me, all of that. But then in being there, I think it makes you more, I guess, not tolerant, but more understanding of different people and different types of people. And yeah, and I think as well, because Brighton at the time, I don't know if it still is, was kind of like a big hub for like gay culture and gay life in England. And so at the time, I remember when I went there, and I used to work in a club, and I would tell the managers in the club, like, I don't want to work any nights where it's, I just want to work the straight nights, like that should, and I even lied to them. I was like, is it my religion in Africa? We can't do this. And
were you getting hit on?
No, I just wouldn't want to work those nights. I just thought, like, I don't know. I don't know what I expected to see. I thought maybe I'll just see like intense debauchery or something that would scar me for life. And one day they called me in because I was probably at that point the most senior person working at the club, and everybody, both of the two managers we had called in sick on the same day. So the owner had to come in, and I remember he called me in that day, and it was like double pay. And I didn't even know what the night was. I just went because of double pay. And I get there, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, it's a gay night. I hope you haven't got a problem with that. And I was like, nah, I'm here. What do I do? Like, do I, so I kind of just stayed behind the bar, behind the, and it was funny because I was just watching people, and I didn't leave the little radius behind the bar the whole time. I'd send people out to work and do stuff. But I realized that like these are actually just like human beings having fun, admittedly in their own orientation and sexual disposition, but they're just having fun like everybody else, and they're just like having a great time. And and it kind of demystified a lot of that for me. And I think Brighton, like I would say really like yeah, it made me have a lot more understanding and insight to just different types of people. If there was one thing, I was already doing music beforehand, so I don't know if it was, if it played a part. I do know that there were a lot of great bands and a lot of great shows to constantly go to. But I think if there was one thing I would say Brighton did, it was that it just made me more aware of that people can be different, and that's fine. People can live a different life, and that's fine. I feel like there's this thing that we have, a lot of the systems that we grow up with tell us that if it's not your way, it's wrong, and yeah, and I think it just kind of broke down a lot of that.
I think my experience moving into the UK, I guess my leaving Africa and coming here, and also within Africa, I grew up in a multicultural setting. So coming here, it wasn't that stark, but I can imagine how that experience then makes you start to question a lot of your cultural norms and values, and being confronted with the fact that there are differences in cultural norms and values depending on where you go. And I'm sure you've seen this a lot with your career so far. We kind of jumped into, I guess, a certain space in your life, and pre-music, pre-adult Wale, aka tech, you come from, I guess, a home with siblings. You lost your father quite early on in your life.
Yes.
And pretty much raised by a single parent.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that shaped you? Like you spoke about working at university, whether it was the club or working at American Express. I worked through university. I wasn't at American Express though. I was at Barclaycard. So, and people would ring up and you tell them their balance.
Yep,
they want to do a balance transfer.
Same.
What's my, they want to increase their limit, but you're like, oh, sorry, your credit rating is not, what it should be to increase the limit. And I remember actually amongst some of my peers at the time, the working while studying seemed foreign, but also there was oh my God, I can't believe you get to work. But the reality was I didn't really have much of a choice not to work. Was that the same for you, or were you, what was the driving factor behind, I guess, all of that?
Yeah, because I was raised by my mom, and at the time, I guess it's like it almost sounds like a Nollywood film script in some ways, where like my dad was from a relatively affluent family, and at the time when he passed, so like my older brother and sister had to they went to boarding school in the UK at age 9, both of them from age 9. And so at the time when my dad passed, I guess there was a lot of financial instability, because also, he, being an African man at that time, probably didn't want his wife to work, didn't involve her in too much of his business affairs. So I guess after he passed, a lot of his business partners, I would say did us dirty, let's put it that way. But in a lot of ways, yeah.
But that's a common African story, right? And even not even African, that's just a common story in general.
Yep. Yeah, no, it is. I think that it's I just feel that it's just human nature, human greed a lot of times, as one spectrum of human nature, I'd say. And so I mean, there was a lot of financial insecurity, and then obviously at the same time my mother tried her best to maintain as much, obviously my brother and sister are in these expensive schools in the UK. She doesn't want to bring them back. She wants to maintain their sort of level of education, and then at the same time, so for me, I was the first one. And I don't remember growing up, I used to be so upset about it. And it's such a weird thing now, because at the time I was so angry that, I didn't get to go to Europe, and, why did I not, how come I have to go to King's College of all schools in Nigeria, boarding school in Nigeria. And so I was very angry about that. But then also is this weird thing, because you also understand that your mom is going through these things, So for me, it was a lot. I think a lot of my foundational lessons are taken from my mother. They are lessons that she, for almost everything in life, I kind of remember when she taught me that specific lesson. Maybe it's greed, or don't steal, or don't like don't envy other people, or I remember specific situations where she would tell me those things. And then coming to the UK, I would like to say that me working during university was some sort of like generous act, or
No.
something I chose to. But
No.
really what it was is that I'd gone to another university, Coventry, for 2 years. I literally, when I left Coventry University, was when I got into Brighton. So that's after 2 years of university, my third year in Brighton. And all this time I was telling my mom, like, yeah, I'm in year 2, I'm in year 3, I'm about to graduate. But I had to like repeat. I had to repeat because I didn't go to university those 2 years at all. Like when I got to Brighton was the first time I realized that the difference between a lecture and a seminar. Like I
Oh,
just had,
goodness.
yeah, and that's 2 years in university. So I think
Yeah.
she kind of sussed after the second year. She was like, okay, so your graduation is next August. And I was like, no, I'm changing. And, the course I'm changing to, it has an additional 3 years, to the 2 I've already done. I think at that point, she never said it, but I think she knew straight away that this kid is clearly lying. But I think she was just happy I was getting out of Coventry and out of like the friend group I was in at the time. But she said to me, like, look, this time it's going to be different. This time I'm not giving you all this like pocket money, or I'll pay your rent, and everything else you figure out, And then after like the first year of her paying my rent and me figuring it out, like I realized that, okay, I was able to get a student loan. I actually enjoyed working, so I didn't need money. So I've been like independent in that way since probably like my first year at university in Brighton. And I've just never looked back, really.
So what were you doing for 2 years?
I was partying, I was rapping,
Hey,
I was
hey.
chasing women or girls at the time. It was like Coventry was a very Nigerian school, and because
Yeah.
before I went to Coventry, I went to Dublin, and in Dublin I felt like very disconnected from Nigerians, from like
Your
from
community.
my community. So I looked for, it's crazy because I got accepted into Leeds and Coventry, and I chose Coventry because I heard there were more Nigerians and it was a party school. And, so I literally went there to, hang out with Nigerians the
Your
whole time.
friends.
Yeah, I didn't
But
have
in
any.
context, right? Dublin then was, I guess, Dublin circa 2000 and what, 2000? Like what
Probably a
year did
bit
you
earlier
move?
than that.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so
probably. Yeah,
there's no black community as it is
there was
now. Like,
there was none. Like, so you would see another black person on the road, you've never met them before, but you stop and speak to each other. You'd be like, hey, where
yeah.
are you from? You're from Kenya. Oh, I'm from Nigeria. Oh, great. Let's exchange numbers. And then we'd exchange. We had that old phone where you had like Snake on the phone.
Yeah.
That's how old it was. And then we'd exchange numbers, and we might call each other again. We might go to the one black club it's not even a black club, the one club where they
No,
play.
where they have one hip hop night or a hip hop set or
Exactly.
R&B set or something.
Exactly.
My sister lived in Belfast.
Oh, wow.
For a few years. So I totally understand the context. I think, obviously, with everything going on now, the nuances of being an immigrant in a predominantly European setup sort of speaks volumes now. And I think a lot of people can start to understand some of the challenges that are faced. But nonetheless, you decide to, you have your career in finance, and then in 2008, decide that you're giving up your career and you're moving to Africa to become a creative.
No, I wish it was that like definitive, but no. So literally I was having a hard time at the job because basically I had been told that I could go to Amsterdam for 2 years and move back to London with the same job. So, and I had a really difficult manager at the time because I'd do these rotations into different departments, and everywhere I went, everyone loved me. And I'm not even trying to be funny, like everyone loved me, all the departments. And then the last rotation was 6 months with this Belgian lady. And now when I look back at it, especially in the context of what's happening today, I noticed that there were a lot of things that were very insidious forms of racism, to be quite honest.
Microaggressions, right?
Yes, microaggressions. There was like a lot of like, I don't even know. I remember one particular incident when we went for this review, because it was a special program within the company. They take us to different countries to have these reviews, and they bring everyone from the same programs in different countries into this new. So we went to Paris for this weekend, and I'd had my review before I left Amsterdam, and they were like, "Wow, Wale, your shoes, like, yeah, you're doing really good." And then I get to Paris, and I'm like happy because I think my review is going to be great. She's going to give me great feedback. And then everyone who was in that meeting came out, some of my previous managers, and they were like, "Wow, what have you done to her?" And I was like, "I don't understand." And they were like, "Yeah, like I've never heard a worse review." Like literally, like, in fact, it was so bad that we thought it was like really personal. And so they told me some of the stuff she was saying, like, that I'm very unapproachable. I'm very angry all the time. I was like,
Oh my
literally,
God, angry black man.
yeah, like I'm literally angry. I'm unapproachable. A lot of people feel intimidated by me,
Oh, wow.
and yeah. So then when I went to like, I guess like confront her about it, like, sorry, I heard this. And she was like, look, I'm really like, it was almost like I'm about to attack her or something. And I was
I
like,
feel
no,
threatened.
yeah, like, I'm
Karen.
just like, I just want
Hashtag
to have a,
Karen.
proper conversation about what's going on. And yeah, and it was just stuff like that. So at that point, I tried to move back to London. She blocked a couple of, I'd gotten another role in London. I'd set everything up, and she was like, nope, you can't go. You have to stay with me after your rotation. I'm going to keep you for another 6 months. And I was like, literally, but you don't like me. So why not just like, let me go? And so at the time I was very frustrated. I went to Lagos for Christmas that year. I met some friends. My partner in SDC, actually, at the time, he had moved back a year before. And so he had a group of friends in Lagos, and they were about to do a concert around Nigeria with Two-Face. It was called Two-Face and Friends. And they were the ones organizing the concerts, and it's a tour. So they were the ones organizing the tour, and they were like, look, we want you to come and work with us. We're building a team. After this, we want to do like these tours around Africa. And so I was like, oh, well, I've got a great job. I'm all right. I went back to Amsterdam, and then it was just this year of the financial crisis globally. And at the time I was just like, I can't really, I got back, it was January, February, the weather was horrible. Everything was, gray. And I was just like, I could be in Nigeria right now on this tour with these guys. So actually I'm going to take a 6-month sabbatical, made up some story about my relative being ill or something, and I had to go and take care of a relative or something. I don't remember what I said, and they allowed me to take a sabbatical for 6 months. And I actually just did that so that in case it didn't work out and I needed to come back to my job, that that window will be open. But I never went back. So it wasn't a plan. And then from the tour was kind of how, because I was still in Nigeria and I'd seen all these like new artists and new energy around the music, I was like, okay, well, why don't we try and see what making music in Nigeria would look like, and then we started doing it. We built friendships with a lot of these artists, so like people like Two-Face, Neka, MI, people like this were on our first album, which a lot of times you'd probably spend years in the industry trying to develop these relationships, but we knew them like fresh off this tour. So yeah, so we're just like, let's try and put out a song. And then we put out a song, and then our community of like friends and people really sort of like bandied around us, which gave us a lot of belief in what we were doing. And then we just continued from there, really. So it was kind of, I wouldn't say we stumbled into it, but like, because we'd already been doing music before, but I would say it wasn't really deliberate to move to Nigeria and pursue a music career.
This podcast is sponsored by Malay Natural Science. Malay's products are inspired by the rich landscapes, alluring scents, and ancient wisdom of Africa. Their luxurious fragrance and body care range balances 100% natural active ingredients and scientifically proven formulas to heal, protect, and pamper your skin. Malay ships worldwide, and you can buy their products at maleeonline.com. They also offer a free sample if you'd like to try. So even with the recognition of, winning the BBC One Extra thing, and to be fair, hip hop and the music scene isn't what it is, I say the African music scene isn't what it is today. I remember I went to say uni parties and, Banky W coming to sing at them. And then it was, I guess, seen as something people did as a hobby. It wasn't very much a career, especially for, I guess, middle class kids. It was something you did because you enjoyed it, but it wasn't a career. And then arriving and starting to want to forge ahead in it as a career, what, like, when did that shift start to happen? Because it's completely different for any young kid today, right? They've seen the successes of you guys
Yeah.
into
So there's a template they can follow.
yeah.
Now, for us, there was no template. First of all, I would say the closest thing was I went to the same, well, myself and my Olumide, who I rap with, we both went to the same school as Nato C. So, and we were actually both his seniors in school. So it was that I guess Nato C and probably Banky W were I'd say, and probably us for a large extent, were like, I guess
You guys were the first.
we're the guinea pigs. And it's funny because, like I say to people, like a lot of the artists that are now doing great, they're like, I've spoken to a lot of their parents because I was that guy who, Mrs. Davis's son is doing this music thing, maybe we should have a chat with him. I would have I met there's a rapper Ladi Poe. I met through his mom, knowing my mom, and I think I really feel his mom wanted me to intervene and tell him it was a stupid idea, but unfortunately I didn't, because he's really talented. DRB, one of them, TZ, his dad called me for a meeting to have a chat with me, and it's funny, like literally a lot of people would literally refer to us, as and for us it was also equally funny because my mom was never hostile towards it, but I would say she was, at some point, she was maybe a bit disappointed in my choices. I think she believed maybe that I was being brainwashed, which is weird because a lot of people in my circle would probably say, "Oh, Wale is the one leading this thing forward," right?
So you were literally the rebel with the cause.
Yeah, I was probably one of the, I was lumped with a bunch of other rebels, funny enough, but I think some of them had, like, when you're growing up and there always these bad kids that they warn you about. So I think maybe a couple of them had those bad kid reputations. And I was the one that now for some reason, everyone thinks that I'm this saint and angel. And so they were probably like, yeah, Wale is being led astray. And, and I had a lot of like interventions from family members and just like loads of people who and even friends, I think, to be honest with you, the most difficult transition was not really the older generation, because you kind of steel yourself against those attacks. Yeah. You see them coming and you can like block, I think the ones that are the most difficult were probably from your peers who somehow think that because you've taken this direction, like you've lost your mind, or not even lost your mind, but like, I used to really get annoyed because some friends would talk about business opportunities, but they would never involve me in those conversations. And I'm just like, but guys, like, I want these same opportunities too. And like, but you do music now. Like, we thought you'd opted out. Like, or even like girls, when you're like talking to girls who you want to date or something, and you could tell that like they're doing like mental calculations in their head, like, okay, so this music, like, do you think you're going to do this forever? Like, maybe one day you might want to go back and work in a real job. Like, do you think this is like really what you want to do forever? Or some girls will tell you straight up, like, I don't date artists or musicians or entertainers or whatever, So, I mean, I think those are the ones that, from friends and people around sort of like the same age group, I think those are probably the more difficult ones to digest.
And so you take that, and then, but where's the confidence coming from to keep pushing forward? Because there's you've talked about your role in sort of, I guess, the greater music scene with the mentoring, etc. But there's also a level of sort of using your voice and activism in the industry for the industry that you do. But where did the confidence for that come from?
I think that if I was to look back at, I've been in Nigeria for about 11 years now, maybe even maybe like 12 years now, actually. And I think if I was to say, like, I guess what I've learned the most in that period is the fact that, like, I think I didn't realize how resilient I was before that period. I always thought I was someone that looked for the security, like financial security, and that was key to me as a person. And so for me, I think being in Nigeria, I want to say the confidence has come from falling down, getting back up, falling down, getting back up again. And I think that when you realize that actually, you know what? Okay, I'm broke now. Like I'm broke. Like I have, and then before I used to do this thing where I would always be stuck in, oh, you had a great apartment in Amsterdam, you had a great job that was paying you a lot of money. Now look at yourself, yeah, you're regressing. And like, so there was always this inner conflict of, should I go back to corporate? Should I, like, is it too late? Can I still? And I think for me, at a point, it was a very random conversation I had with someone, and he's a film director actually, and he said something to me that really stuck. He said he wakes up and he writes every day for an hour, every single day. And I said, wow, that's a lot of discipline. And he said, no, it's just a practice, it's a habit that I formed. And for me, the reason why when I formed this habit was when I realized that I had opted out of normal, right? Like I have actually opted out of normal. I'm not, I've realized that I'm going to have to like plant my own garden and figure out how to make that grow. And there's a freedom that comes from that, that means that, like, so for example, now I was given an example yesterday. Somebody was talking to me about potentially coming to work for their organization in a creative sort of space. And I'm able to be very blunt and very direct to them, and like I literally said to the person, look, I'm not, if you're looking for someone to come to Africa and like pack all our people on a slave ship, that's not me. Find somebody else. And even when I said it, I was like, part of me was like, maybe you shouldn't have said it, but it's how I feel. And the freedom is that, like, if he says tomorrow, like, nah, actually, we don't want you, I'm still fine. Like, I'm still gonna, continue in life. So I think that once I realized that I was actually free, yeah, like I think that's what gives me confidence, because and this is what I tell like young people or creatives, is that it's not like freedom is going to be ugly, uncomfortable, annoying, frustrating, in parts. But if you can ride those parts out, like you really, really appreciate what you get at the other side of it.
With alternative music, I guess, aka independent, and that transition for you guys as a group, and speaking to the entrepreneurship of that, by and large, I guess you can give context in terms of, I guess, the African music scene. In the early days, everyone was on a label. And then I guess you guys were one of the first to start the independent route.
Yeah,
If I'm
yeah, I
right
think
in
so.
saying that, and being able to make a success of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that everyone was on a label with air signals, because air quotes, because the labels back then really consisted of like one benefactor who had money to put in your career, and um, and maybe depending on the benefactor, he might hire one or two other people. I'd say the real labels were probably Chocolate City, EME, which Banky and his partners had, and maybe I'll say Mo Hits at a particular time, then Maven. And I feel like, for us, it was never really, I mean, like, it was never really an option. Like, we had a few situations where some people said, oh, my uncle wants to invest in music and would like to meet you guys. And we did go and honor those like conversations in the hope that maybe we would get some capital, which would mean we're not spending our own money all the time. But like those never really went anywhere. And so for us, we literally learned that we had to just like, so like most of our videos I've shot, not because, like, one is more cost effective, and two, yeah, and then I was able to like, develop that as a skill that other people started to pay me for as well, so for me it's always been like bootstrapping and trying to figure out how to, you know, like what's the next. And I think that has made us very strategic with the music we put out as well. That has made us, because you need, like, if you're going to shoot a video for this song, like you need to be sure that this is the song to shoot a video for. Yeah. And so like, I mean, it's made us very strategic in that. It's also but at the same time, it's also helped our music in the sense where there's no one sitting over us telling us, no, that's not the hit. Like, you need to find the hit. Like, we're able to take more risks. We're able to, and I think that's one of the things that like the people that listen to our music appreciate, that it's very us. Like, we're not trying to reach for something. I mean, so half and half, like the independent journey to me has always been, because even if I had a benefactor who was dropping money, I would still want to guide the process, because I feel like I know the process and I know what to do, and that's just come from experience. That's come from my own knowledge or intelligence or whatever. Yeah, I think now, when you look at what has happened over the last, like, so 10, 12 years, a lot of those labels have fallen apart in a way, mainly because Nigeria doesn't have the legal structure or framework to support the industry in that way. So once an artist says, I don't want to do anymore, the most you can do is maybe get an injunction. And once you get that injunction, you're not eating, he's not eating. So your assets is depreciating by the day. So what tends to happen is people say, okay, you know what, let me take 10% of your career going forward and you're free to go. Or some people just let you go completely because they don't need the hassle or the stress. But what happens then is that their enthusiasm to invest more in the sector is dwindled completely now. Like, so it's a very tricky space. But I don't even think record labels work in Nigeria, which is another
another discussion. But owning your own, I guess, masters, owning your own rights. When you start looking at the landscape around streaming, your Spotify's, etc. Now, being able to transition from, and to be fair, you're of the generation of, I guess, huge hip hop influence, right? Like growing up
Definitely
with, Nas and all of those guys. I think that then changes. And I want to say there was a hip hop generation. I want to say anyone from like 77, 79 through to like early 80s, if you're born within that sort of space and time, I think there was a huge export of hip hop and R&B from the US into Africa at the time. And that really formed a lot of our taste in music, in culture,
in life,
even though we're all African kids, right? And then being able to take that and fuse it with our own culture. And in so many ways, you guys were able to do that with music and, calling it sunlight, I don't know, sunlight, hip hop, sunlight rap. But it's a fusion, right, of the African influence and a huge sort of rap hip hop influence. I remember being a kid, I have two older siblings, and I remember, there being parties and, the goal was, the boys would dress like crisscross. And then it was Brandy came out and everyone the girls wanted braids in the same way as Brandy, like that generation. And then fast forward into this generation where you're watching still there being an influence of, American hip hop, R&B culture, but it's completely different in what they're living. I say that because of wanting to touch on, I guess, where your love for music kind of came from and how that shaped you.
Right. So I think that for me, my love for music came from my older brother, actually, who would, because he lived in the UK, he'd come back every Christmas sometimes in the summer, and he'd bring like his Case Logic CD booklet. Like he just had CDs, and and he would have like from. I remember every year, like there were new CDs. So like, from Ice-T to Ice Cube to NWA to Gangstar to all sorts,
Bone
Fushnikins,
Thugs and
Brand
Harmony.
Nubians. Yeah. And then he started to graduate. And I remember, like vividly remember the year he brought back Snoop Dogg's first album. And, and that was like, it's so funny because I laugh with him now that like, when there were certain albums that when he was going back, I just had to steal them. Like I was like, this album is not like, cause I don't know how, like in Nigeria, there's no HMV, there's no, shop to
Yeah.
go and buy this CD. So you never have it. And like me going back from the holidays with that new music, I'll be like the coolest kid in school. So that Snoop Dogg album, I think that was like 93 or 94 or something. I remember stealing that CD. And I just feel that like so many things that like we know as like both consciously and subconsciously actually like we learned from hip hop. Like I remember asking my uncle, he's like a younger uncle, and I remember asking him once like what's Indo, what's gin and juice, like rolling down the street smoking Indo, what's that? And he was like, it's a different kind of cigarette or something, like. And there were just all these things, and some of it is negative as well because like a lot of the perception towards women was formed by it ain't no fun if my homies can't have none. And when you grow up, you're like, really, wow, is that what we were singing and rapping to ourselves? And I remember like going to like house parties in Lagos at the time. And you go to these house parties and you dance to hip hop, and and those house parties were so much fun because like they would, at some point they'll bounce everybody, all boys out, you have to come back in if you're cool enough. And and then at the end of the house party, it'll go to like blues where they play like slow, or the like Brandy, SWV songs like that, where you get to dance with the girl that you like. And like music was always just there. Like growing up as a teenager, like it was always there. Even before my teens, my brother bringing the CDs, that was my first real sort of memories. I remember like birthday parties, you'd go and dance and do musical chairs and things like that, and dancing competitions and all those things. And so it was always on the side. And I think now when I grow up, like it's funny because my mom casually would just drop some gems. Like one, she'd just be like, oh, so your dad used to be the Motown rep for West Africa. And I'm like, so how are you just telling me this now? And she'd be like, oh, yeah, we knew Barry Gordy and, and these people, we were friends with them, and there was one Jewish guy, she would say the name. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, like, when they came for Festac 77, Stevie Wonder even played in the house. And I was like, what? And then she went and literally like brought out a picture of like Stevie Wonder playing in our house. And I was just like, what? Like, so I think that there's also some, I don't know if like, I believe in different sort of ideas, but I think that there is some genetic encoding that makes me like, because I really, 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 really love music. Like it's not even it's like if I was working in a bank or I was working in an oil company, I would still set up a studio in my house and still be like listening and trying to create music. Even if it wasn't a profession, I'd do it for free. I really love discovering new artists and things like that. So I feel like there's something that makes me that way, and really just, and some concerts I've been to have been like, I almost feel as though like is like there's some ethereal type of like moments in these like in the energy that's been transmitted in those concerts from the stage or to the artists on stage. And I really love like like I really love performing music as well for people. Yeah. So I don't know, I think that it's just something that's been around like most of my life, and also I think probably before my life, like in my family, I guess.
Now, I find that happens with me a lot now, especially with my parents and having become a parent recently, where and then they'll throw things out at you and you're like, didn't you think this was relevant for me to know? And sometimes I question if it's a contextual time and place. This will only matter to you now. because you're at that stage of life. I tried touching on streaming and sort of the business of the music. But then pre-social media, I guess that's when you guys were, had some huge hits. And then post-social media, you've also had some success. The role that plays and utilizing things like live and connecting directly with, fans of your music, how is that shaping, I guess, Show Dem Camp? And then I would love to talk more about the video and film directing. You kind of touched on it. I guess it was a needs must.
Yep.
I will pick up a camera and figure this out. And I did the same thing. I shoot a lot of my campaign imagery for my business because I got tired of the end results. But we'll get to that. I think more around sort of social media and streaming and using that as a platform and live. I think because for a lot of people, it seems straightforward when you get all these sort of YouTube videos and people are explaining it, but very few practitioners that are, walking away with the success of it. And as an independent group, do you guys call yourself a group or a duo?
A duo, I'd say. But yeah, group is fine. Group, some people call us group. We're used to all these tags now, so it's cool.
I guess navigating the business of that, because we're now in a digital era, right? So Korea started pre-digital sort of real influence. And then you have the likes of SoundCloud, and then people are now figuring out, how do I build an audience? And then how do I reach that audience directly? And by and large, in the music industry, you guys are a lot of firsts in terms of pioneering. But again, that was another space that you guys tapped into early on.
Yeah. So I think that if the shift hadn't happened to to digital platforms, so the Apple Musics and the Spotify's and where music currently is now, I don't think we would have survived. I think, and the reason I say that is because I think that and what's the word? Not alternatively, but in another world,
independent.
I think that if it had come earlier, would probably be maybe even bigger than we are now. And the reason I say that is because when we first started in Nigeria, the only way was to put your music on CDs, right? What happened then was that once your music were on CDs, you would then go and, if you were big enough, so let's say you were like a P Square at the time, who were huge, you had these marketers who, for lack of a better word, they're piraters or whatever, pirates who steal your music, right? And they sell it and they mass produce it and they sell it. So what had happened is that these guys were so powerful that the artists had to go and make deals with the pirates. Look, we'll give you our music because you're the biggest distributor, right? So rather than you stealing my music, how about you pay me a fee for the master license of the music, and you can mass produce it. And, so it's you pay me an upfront and then maybe you give me a cut of what you make. But a lot of people would focus on the
distribution deal.
Yeah. A lot of people focus on the upfront because there's no way to track what they made. You might have a benevolent marketer who would come and give you some money back later, but usually they just pay you an upfront. Now, for us who were not...
So essentially the CDs we're buying in traffic, etc., these are CDs put out by these
marketers. They put their logo on it. They put it's a business. It became an actual business. And there was a market called Alaba where you would go and, do that. And there was a big sort of Igbo community of marketers, that you would go and meet because they had networks in the East and they would have the music going across places. So, we've come in now, new guys on the scene, don't really have a nationwide hit, right? So we've made this album, we've put Two-Face, Neka, all these people that are heroes musically, MI, people like that. So we go to the marketers now, okay, we've got this album, and then they listen to it and they say, no, this is not the current sound, so we're okay, well, we're sure this will work because we have all these greats, and they're no, this is not the current sound, There are no hits. Where are the hits? So they were in essence almost like record labels in themselves, because for them to invest their money, they had to hear things that would bring them ROI in the music. So they were like, no hits, no hits. So we then scheduled like a bunch of meetings with these guys. And one of them, the main one, actually said to us, like, the only way he would market this CD is if we paid him to market, because his cost of distribution is a cost, is a tangible cost, and he doesn't know us. He doesn't know if we're going to make the music work. So actually we should pay him, like, to use his distribution network. And we're like, no, we can't. That makes no sense. We can't do that. Like, how can we create the music then pay you to pirate our music? Like, obviously, yes, you're distributing it, but anyway, so we went back very disappointed, didn't really know what to do. We actually went to this place, Alaba, which is like almost like on the best day with the traffic, like a 3+ hour drive in Lagos, right? So, then we came up with this bright idea that, okay, why don't we invest in a marketer, right? Like, why don't we get our own marketer in Alaba, and and then we can like get into this business. Like, we're young, we didn't really know that like it's a cartel, but like, why don't we get our own little stall? And so we found a guy in Alaba. We paid for a store for a year. We paid him some money to stock up on new music and stuff that he was going to distribute. He distributed our album for us. We never got, or at least not to my knowledge, we never got one penny back in that return. I think that guy probably just thought, look at these Muppets from Ikoyi.
Jokers.
Oh, yeah, who've given me a store for a year, thinking I'm going to actually come and give them some money back.
Yeah.
But what was crazy was that, like, as a result, we had no way of knowing how our music was doing. Nigeria was very difficult then for upcoming new artists, because then everything was almost like
the role of the radio.
The radio was pay for play. So, so like, if you don't have resources, you're not the biggest artist. And then, you can't get resources unless you're a big artist. So it was, or unless you have a label behind you, so it was now like, damn, like, what do we do? So some radio stations supported, like Beat FM and people like that, supported just, with no inducements or whatever. And so we put out this first album, and then the first time we actually toured, did a tour around the country with some other artists, was when we realized that, hold on, like, people actually know these songs and they're singing them back to us. So maybe this CD did, because there was no way to measure the growth or measure what it did. And so now, fast forward to now, where with streaming, the first thing that is vindicated for me with streaming is the fact that we are independent. So in this period of COVID and lockdown, like, we've been getting paid every month pretty much. And as well, like, a lot of artists, like 70, anywhere from, let's say, like 50 to 70% of your revenue is taken by your label, so in this period where it's literally we're just splitting it two ways and we keep it moving, it's been a blessing in this period. I also think that, like, the fact that we're able to just, like, because we've always been like very militant in that, no, we're not paying radio, no, we're not paying TV. So actually, like, if you don't play it, that's your own, and it's hindered us for a long time. But now it's a more democratized setup where it's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's social media. You can create a song here now in London. Ghost can create his verse in Lagos. We put it out and it's gone around the world tomorrow, And so for me, it's like, now the playing field is somewhat even. And I think that's where people begin to realize that it's weird. Like, on social media platforms, maybe we have about 50 to 60,000, if that, like, followers across platforms. But for me, it's also been a case of, like, I'm happy with like a fan a day, a real fan, not a follower, like a real fan, somebody who comes across our music and is like, wow, I really like these guys, I'm going to support. Because what happens is that those are the people that are willing to put disposable income behind your music, not just streaming, but like when we do shows, like every show we've done in the last 3-4 years has been sold out. And you have artists that have like 500,000 followers who can't pack a 500 capacity venue. So it's like, are they really your fans, or people that are just following you because that's the cool thing to do, but they have no emotional attachments or investment in your music? So for us, I think it's been a really it's been a real roller coaster. But I think that, for countries like Nigeria, I think technology is actually, obviously technology has its downsides, but technology is actually the key to a lot of our problems. Even if you look at it from a socioeconomic perspective, the reason why, people are shouting today about rape, or the reason why they eventually spoke about bringing back our girls, was because some other people used technology to amplify those stories to the point where the Nigerian government got embarrassed, really. And they were like, oh, now we have to stamp, we have to end rape, or we have, and it's that public glare that technology has given us, because otherwise, before, these things have been happening for time, it's just like no one sheds a light, no one amplifies. So I think technology is a good equalizer for places like Nigeria, where we need a serious like evolution in our mindset and our practices and our outlook and our views, everything. And the only thing that can jumpstart that evolution based on where we currently are is technology, in my opinion.
Very much so. I think it's playing a huge part in our ability to get our voices heard, our ability to put out our versions of things, right? Whether that's music. I think one of the key things for me when I looked at starting the podcast was being able to have a lot of these conversations, which by and large happen in private, where for the most part, people don't get to understand how it was done and how you guys are able to make a living out of, say, for instance, music. As one of the sort of earlier entrants into the scene, you guys have seen that change, and also then evolving into, like a creative entrepreneur, and into then the video and film directing. You've worked with lots of international brands, not just, I guess, on the local African scene. How have you been able to, one, reach sort of the rest of Africa with your music, and then two, work with people like Visa, Netflix, Farfetched, Kenzo, Emirates?
Yeah. I guess like I was at a crossroads in like maybe, I think it was either 2014 or 2015. I'm not sure now, but around then I'd like gone through some different life changing experiences. That was probably our least productive year musically. Yeah, there's just a lot going on. And so what happened was, basically at this crossroads, and I met a friend who introduced me to her partner at the time, who was starting up an online TV platform. It's called Disrupt TV. And so he then met me and was like, what do you do? And I said, yeah, I'm a musician. But my friend, she's really one of those people that really champions you, like, because I don't really like to, I cringe a lot when I have to like sell myself, what I do. And so she's like, no, but Wale shoots videos as well. He just shot a video for NECA. He just did this. And I think the guy was a huge fan of NECA at the time. So he was like, oh, can I see the video? And I showed him the video. And he was like, oh, wow, I'd love to get your number if you don't mind. I'd like to discuss some like business opportunities with you. And I was like, yeah, sure. So he called me about a week later and he was like, he wants to start up this platform. He's moved back to Nigeria and he hasn't really been able to find people that he can trust because, there's a lot of capital he has to put into setting up something like this. And he just doesn't want people who just chop his money or, who don't know what they're doing or whatever. And because his girlfriend at the time had vouched for me, that like he wanted to see if I was interested in doing that. And he's like, look, I know you're a musician, so it'll be a flexible job. We will build it out together. I'll pay you a monthly salary, so what would it take? And at the time, like I was probably like coming off like my lowest ebb in the 12 years I'd been in Nigeria. So it was actually a godsend when he came. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, like I called an amount. He was like, yeah, fine. I was like, damn, I should have said more. And then we start building this team together, and we train up about like 15, 18, like directors, because I had been shooting videos, right? And I'd gone to film school. So I had like an idea of how to like, what I thought was necessary. Because I feel, going back to what I said about technology, I feel that like where we need to catch up with education is to like literally figure out a way to like, let's get to the tip of the arrow. Like, what is necessary for this economy? We don't need to learn all the other stuff that we're never going to ever use. What are the tools that somebody can literally go out and fish with now? So for me, like we trained these guys, and it was the first time to actually try some of those things in training other people. And it was really good. Like we trained cameramen, presenters, we made them watch, and it was very technology based as well. So we'd get videos of presenters on YouTube, we'd make them watch, we'd analyze, why does a presenter speak like this? Why, this is how to look at the camera. We did this training for a period of like 4 or 5 months, and we began creating content. And so in creating the content, the company lasted for, I'd say, just under 2 years. I think it was a very ambitious project. I think to have 20 people on salary for 2 years, aiming to build a purely online platform in a country like Nigeria, where there's obviously data issues, connectivity issues. He was trying to build like a Vice or something, and I think it was a bit too ahead of his time. I think even now would still be ahead of his time based on the data in Africa. But anyway, but what that did was that it gave me like one, confidence back in a lot of ways, because I was able to then apply a lot of like my corporate background or processes or whatever into work, and then two, trained up all these guys who a lot of them I still work with, and a lot of them have gone on to do more amazing things. And it also showed me the opportunities around capacity development in Nigeria, where I feel the main thing that have been bringing the youth any recognition has been the creative industries, from art to music to film and so for me, I really feel that like there needs to be an emphasis to actually get people up to global standards. There needs to be training in those spaces. But anyway, so when the company split up, I cherry picked a few of the people that we had trained, and I started my own sort of like smaller, really lean production outfit, which was just like servicing. We'd come up with create, and people had seen the work we had done. So then there was like an art fair, Artex Lagos, that was coming. I basically pitched like a whole visual campaign around that. And so basically I handled all their visual communication for the first year of the art fair with that team. And then we filmed everything, covered the entire thing. So I think that was our first like major job as a new company. And then from there, other people saw that work, and got us to do more work. I knew a few people in like agencies, so I sent the work to them. They'd seen it, so they gave me more work. And then my brother, who's a film director as well in the UK, he came to Nigeria to shoot a few projects. So he came to do a Kenzo project, actually. So we produced that for him, because I was just like, well, aside from directing, we know the lay of the land, so we can tell you where to go, how to move around. These are things I'd had to encounter and learn myself, area boys, different things going on. So we did that for him. And then, he was working with, a bigger production company in the UK. So they would always be like, oh, well, there's a guy, Wale, who did this other job for us. So like they were throwing work my way. And then as you begin to do one, you start doing another. And then I partnered with, there was a lady as well who, whenever these jobs would come, it would either go to like me or her. So then we had to do a job together once. And we just actually, you know what, why don't we like work together? Because, your fee's in there, my fee's in there. So we're not like,
Yeah.
it's not like it's making our resources.
No one's stepping on anyone's toes.
Exactly. And we had a great like synergy. So then, yeah, we partnered up, and then that even meant more jobs from like both our, I guess, networks. And yeah. And
Amazing.
yeah.
And so then travel for you is, what word can I use? About enlightenment?
Yeah, I think travel for me is about enlightenment, and also I feel so my thoughts are very where to touch on some of them. I would say like I don't really believe in a lot of like the, I guess, borders that have been created. I don't really ascribe to that, especially because like even within the borders, like the concept of a lot of the countries that we have in Africa, I'm talking about particularly, a lot of those countries, the structures don't even work. The makeup of those countries don't even work at all. It's like literally like a child took a pen and just drew a weird shape. We're like, that's a country. Using Nigeria as an example, where the north of Nigeria is more, has more in common with like Niger, Chad, Mali, those countries on the northern side. In Ghana, there's like a Fulani community as well. There's the people in Benin and Togo are, their language almost sounds like Francophone because they were colonized by the French, but it has bits of Yoruba in it as well, because it's this hybrid French Yoruba thing. So for me, I've always just been fascinated with exploring different African countries, going to just like meet people and just like getting, like throwing myself into, I don't like what the franchise hotels or things like that. I just need to like go in and just really feel the pulse of places and meet people. And I feel like there's a lot to learn from, because I also feel as Africans, like we've grown up with, as has most of the rest of the world, we've grown up with a very Eurocentric view of history and education. So it's when I go to Ghana and learn, oh, this is the Ashanti Kingdom, and their kings were around for this amount of time, and this is it. And then I'm learning history like firsthand in real experiences. And I feel like that's something that, it's a shame that like it has to be that, because I feel there's such a rich history that like and it's so weird why, of all the low hanging fruits that I think African countries have, or would be allowed to pursue, that's a very like obvious one. But so yeah, I enjoy that. I enjoy, I've been to quite a few African countries learning. I remember when I went to Rwanda and they were telling me about the genocide there, how like, and I was like, so what is it, tribes? And they were like, no, there's like literally no tribes. It was just like the
wiped
Belgians
out.
and
Yeah, they just wiped people out.
yeah, they literally said, you are this and you are this, and as a result, you are going to rule these other guys, and that's what. But like in terms of like language, in terms of any remarkable feature, there's really no difference between. There was just a clear separation of people. So it's just things like that like really fascinate me, and just learning, still like observing the trauma a lot of African countries are still in, but also the I guess like richness a lot of, and then African people are really like, despite everything they've, I guess, endured, they're really really beautiful, warm people.
I couldn't agree more. And I guess with music, you're able to reach far more people. And, there's a level of activism, a Pan-African activism in the work that you do with music. And also, you've touched on your passion for younger generations and the education and the use of technology in creating those solutions for the future. Is there a particular set of changes within, I guess, the creative industry or music industry? Creatively, you're in, visual arts as well as, music, that you would hope for Africa to help foster that industry a little bit more? Because there's something about it. I think in recent years, it almost feels like it's reserved for those with privilege. And if you don't have that, then you are local, in air quotes, right? What would you be hoping for, I guess, moving forward? Because, we're now in an era where there can be, as a genre, Afro beats or Afro hip hop, Afro fusion, whatever you want to call it, is now becoming global and recognized and given the airplay and the recognition that it deserves.
Yeah. I think I hope for a number of things. I think the first thing I hope for is that we learn from so if you go back to like the music industry, right? Like the music industry was especially like what we know now and different genres that we know now were genres that were a lot of them were taken from a lot of the music were created by Black people in the American civil rights era and slightly before that as well. So a lot of these genres were then monetized in essence, and then packaged and then sold, for mass consumption, right? And the structures that were set up then were heavily skewed towards maintaining, I guess, like you can't have one thing in isolation. So it's like maintaining, I guess, like a societal structure. It's the same thing with like sports actually in the US, where it's still, sports is also like a microcosm of like society, where you have all the Black people running around in the field, literally a field, and the people that get paid the most, the owners of those fields and the owners of those sports teams, usually don't look like them. And the same thing in the music industry as well. But in the music industry, the contracts and the structure and setup of those music industries highly skewed in favor of like the corporate organizations that run them. And I think now you can argue that like there's so many different genres and different people doing music that all of us are getting these same types of contract, irrespective of race or irrespective of color. But I think that what has happened now in Nigeria and Africa is that we've created an ecosystem where like we don't really need anyone. The main thing we may need people for is maybe cracking the mainstream in America, cracking the mainstream in the UK, because there's a structural approach to those places for you to get on certain platforms and shows in the UK and America, which will guarantee you mass eyeballs on you. You need to play a certain game. But the first thing is, I feel a lot of African artists don't even need that. If I'm being honest, like we're not like pop, like we're never going to, fully be like, even us at Show Dem Camp, for example, my aim is to be able to tour the world with my music. My aim is to be able to continue to collaborate with people that I love and respect as musicians or as creative talents. That's it. I don't really think that, I want to be the biggest. I don't want to be, I don't know, Justin Bieber or Drake. Like I'm not aiming for that. That's not my, so I wouldn't sign a major record deal now, unless I used it as okay, these guys are paying me $500,000 and this is, I don't know, some kind of retirement fund for myself, and I'm happy to trade off my music for that. That's one way to look at it. But I don't really think there's any need for us to sign to a major label. And so I feel some artists will require that. Like some artists that want to be huge, big, mega global superstars will require those machines and systems. But I really hope we learn that we have the control currently and we should not give that away cheaply. And I also hope that another initiative that I'm working on behind the scenes is actually to talk to not just the musicians, but talk to people in the music space, because it's people like me or people that are my peers that these companies will hire when they come into this space. So how do we, learn from other mistakes and actually come together prior or now that they've even started hiring some of us? How do we align and map out what our own agenda is? So regardless of where you might work in a Sony, you might work in a Universal, we're all aligned. We're aligned in thought, we're aligned in direction, we're aligned in the type of agreement. And I feel that, I feel like that's very important. I also feel that, like, another thing that I've realized is that even now, talking on a Black sort of global perspective, the only thing that has been able to create any meaningful dialogue between African Americans, Africans in Africa, and even like British, Black British, right, is music and the creative arts. Those are the bridges, really, because for the longest time, even in England when I was here, like, I was almost ashamed. I'd be like, my name's Sean, when I was at a point, because like, I'd been in Dublin and I'll tell them Wale and they'd be like, where's Wally? And just like random stuff. So I was just like, yeah, it's easy as Sean, and I had like all sorts of Nigerian friends that called themselves the most ridiculous names. Just because.
To be fair, I did have a friend, Sean, who called himself Sean.
Yeah, I had a friend who called himself Pharrell.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. Pharrell. Like,
because it would be at university. And look, I think with Black Lives Matter, with even just looking at the social shift of questioning cultural norms and values across the world, dealing with COVID, the pandemic, navigating all of these things in what is a collective global traumatic incident, and the healing power that music brings to that. I know that, I'm able to shift my mood by playing, a playlist or some songs. I remember sort of going through, by and large, again, a lot of, Show Dem Camp's early work, and how that captures a snapshot in time and not losing the value of that. Now, I think one of the things with the show that's important for me to highlight is, for a long time within our culture, especially as Africans, everyone has this strong view of what success needs to look like. And that looks like, as you're saying, a Drake or it needs to be that level of success. And I'm pleased that you've been able to articulate beautifully what that means for you and what your ambitions are within that. And I think as a collective, as a creative, as an entrepreneur, you have contributed an immense amount to our culture. And, this is an opportunity for me as someone who has enjoyed your work, to give you your flowers and also to hopefully curate as best as possible a platform that gives the next generation, our peers, anyone looking for the inspiration or motivation to carry on in purposeful work. Because a common thread is each guest is doing work that is beyond the money, beyond the remuneration. It's very much, I believe in what I'm doing. I understand the context of being an African entrepreneur and the weight of that and how that plays into what happens in 10 years, 20 years in creating sustainable industries, and an opportunity to create the infrastructure or even just the ability for someone else to make a difference in their lives and generations to come.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for you giving of your time.
No, thank you.
And where does everyone find you?
So I mean, across all like platforms, literally Show Dem Camp. But one thing I do want to say as well, just to touch on what you just said, I feel that it's very important for people to, like you said, curate these dialogues because I feel that, like, there needs to be balance in everything. There needs to be balance in the narratives that we're being told, and also, and in that, even the balance of us telling our narratives ourselves, I think, is very, very important. And for me, if there's one thing I can say to anybody, young creatives, whoever that might come across, is just like, if you move with integrity, everything will open up. And sometimes it might be in the spaces we're from, it might be counterintuitive to move with integrity. But I think that, once you find yourself doing that, like, you will meet people along the way that will help you, and your own journey and your own purpose becomes clearer as you move along as well. So yeah, thank you for your time at Show Dem Camp, for everything, all the Instagram, Twitter, and all those things. And yeah,
thank you so much
for your work as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Third Culture Africans, the Lifestyle Podcast. We would love to hear from you. So please find us on Facebook or Instagram at Third Culture Africans and leave us a comment. A review goes a long way in getting our show noticed. So please leave us one if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.